Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is High Country Dan and you're at High Country Outdoors, and today we're going to discuss backcountry hammock camping. Is it worth it? Is it right for you? Should you try it? Those all might be questions that you could be asking yourself. What does the total weight look like? What does it look like for site selection or camping spots? So those are some of the questions that I'm going to address in today's video. This is my backcountry hunting setup for the most part. Right now it is spring bear season here in Montana, and I am currently out in the woods. I'm 4.6 miles from the truck, and we're going to do some spring bear hunting. And this is my current setup right now that I'm running. And so, first of all, I guess let me give you a little history as to why and how I got into hammock camping. I'm 43 years old. I'm not 20 anymore. And several years ago, actually on a spring bear hunt, I was back in the backcountry, sleeping in a teepee. I've tried every sleep system out there, you guys. I've tried bivvies with just a Tyvek tarp. I've tried teepees, I've tried tents, and now obviously I'm kind of into hammock camping. So for me, what really sealed the deal was, like I said, about 3-4 years ago on a spring bear hunt. I literally was I couldn't sleep. I wasn't getting a good night's rest. I would wake up incredibly sore and in a lot of pain from sleeping on the ground. I tried a number of different air mattresses, like backcountry air pads, lightweight, thick ones, thin ones. I think I have one still right now that's like a 3.5 or a 4-inch thick pad. And ultimately I just could not get comfortable. I couldn't get a good night's rest, and I was just miserable in the backcountry. So I started doing research. I actually started doing research a number of years ago, probably like 10-15 years ago, on hammock systems, but back then there just really wasn't much. Nowadays you can really deep dive into the hammock market, and there is so much stuff out there that it can almost be overwhelming. So hopefully this video will give you an opportunity to kind of boil down some of the gear that I have tested over the last 3 years. I think this is my 3rd season of hammock camping. And my system is pretty dialed in nowadays. What you see here is pretty much, like I said, my whole system. There's an under quilt. I do have a top quilt, sleeping bag inside the hammock, the Dyneema tarp, guy lines, stakes, cordage, all that stuff. And so I've found that this setup works best for me. Does it mean that it will work best for you? Maybe not. I'm also a really tall guy. I'm 6'6", okay? And so I need a specific type of hammock that will work for me because I am so tall. But understand that there are a lot of options out there, and if you're a shorter person, you might actually be able to save even a lot more weight than what I have in my setup. So with this setup, my hammock, my tarp, my pillow, stakes, cordage, all that stuff weighs right in at 4.2 pounds. I'm sorry, 2.2 pounds, not 4.2 pounds, 2.4 pounds. So if you think of that in terms of a tent, 2.2 pounds is still a pretty lightweight shelter when it comes to a tent. Now, there are a lot of shelters out there that weigh less than that, tent-wise. I have a teepee that weighs like 19 ounces, and it'll sleep like 3 people comfortably. It's a poly sill teepee, and it's great. That's what I used to use all the time. That's considerably lighter. That's probably about a pound lighter, almost, than this shelter system. But the sacrifice is that I actually get a good night's rest. I wake up feeling refreshed and energized and ready to go, and not just like hating life. Some of the equipment that I use and why I've chose it is specifically for weight. The hammock itself This hammock does have a sewn-on bug net. This is a Trailheads hammock, and it is an 11-foot version in extra wide. And so it weighs, I honestly can't tell you. I'll put it up on the screen what it weighs. But ultimately, the hammock itself is pretty darn ultralight. The only way you could go lighter was if you got rid of the bug net, and if you went with a narrower hammock, you could probably save 6 ounces maybe on that, just in the materials. The interesting thing about this hammock again is that it does have a sewn-on bug net, so there's only one side that you can get into the hammock. I chose to do that because it does save some weight. Most of the time when I'm hammock camping, it's either spring or the fall, and sometimes in the summer, but I don't usually use this hammock for the summer, and so I chose to leave the bug net on there because a lot of times in the spring, let's face it, there's mosquitoes. Not so much in the fall, but it really doesn't add a ton of weight, and it's totally worth it in my opinion. The underquilt is a necessary piece of equipment for hammock camping, unfortunately. If you don't have some sort of an underquilt or a pad underneath you, you're going to get cold at night. There's just no doubt about it. That is the downside, and probably the biggest downside of hammock camping is that you need an extra sleeping bag almost, something to put underneath your hammock. Now, I'm a skinny guy and I'm a really cold sleeper, and I believe that underquilt is it's either a 10 or a 0. I think it's a 0-degree underquilt with 950 fill. It's expensive. Thankfully, it's pretty light because it's not like a complete sleeping bag. It doesn't have zippers. I think it weighs in at right around 28 ounces, like just under 2 pounds maybe. And it's great. I love it. There are a lot of different products out there on the market. This is a Hammock Gear. I'll put the model and weight in the description or in the video here for you so you can see what that is. But it is necessary to have. Now, let's talk about the sleep system inside the hammock. Inside the hammock, I have an Enlightened Equipment custom conundrum bag. It is a quilt, meaning that it's not a full sleeping bag, but it is a center zip sleeping bag that zips all the way up, but it doesn't have a head cover. Okay. What I've chose to do is get a down hoodie that matches the sleeping bag. For when it's really cold, I'll take that, throw it in my bag, and that's what keeps my head warm at night, since it's not like a mummy style bag that pulls up around your face and head. That bag is also a -10-degree bag, and again 950 fill, so really expensive but ultralight. It also weighs right at about 2 pounds. I think it's like 28-30 ounces as well. So total weight for the quilts, top quilt and underquilt, is right around 4 pounds. So your mileage is going to vary depending on if you're a cold person or a warm person, the temperatures that you're going to be camping or hunting in. For me, this setup seems to work the best. I've slept down into the teens comfortably with this system in the springtime and even in the winter. And I've also used it in the fall and summer, and you can loosen these straps and you can let a little bit of a draft in there, so that if it's really hot out, or like it's supposed to be 70 tomorrow, if you need to get some draft and cool it off, then you can. The next part of the setup is the tarp. This is a Dyneema hex tarp, also from Hammock Gear. You can see it provides quite a bit of coverage for me. I've never really needed more, with the exception of a couple times in some storms. This tarp is great. I love it. It weighs 6 ounces. The advantage of Dyneema is that it's ultra light, and it's pretty dang durable. The disadvantage is that it can be pretty noisy, so if the wind starts blowing and it starts flapping, it might keep you up at night if you don't have it staked down properly. But otherwise, in my opinion, Dyneema is the way to go. Now let's talk about pack space, because probably something that most backcountry hunters are really conscientious about is their pack space. The one major downside to hammock camping with this kind of gear in the backcountry is pack space. Granted, it's not crazy heavy. Like, this whole system weighs about 6 pounds, 6.5 pounds, I think, at the most. That's all my sleep system, all my shelter, hammock, everything. 6 pounds is not bad. Even when I had ultralight, like going in a bivvy, my backcountry sleep system was like between 4 and 5, so I'm only about a pound, maybe a pound and a half heavier. All right, so talking about pack space, one of the biggest disadvantages to hammock camping is pack space. Now, I run an EXO 6400, I think. It's not the brand new K4 model, but it's the 6400 pack. And hiking in today, I've got 3 days worth of gear and food, which means I've got 3 liters of water, all my clothes, food, just everything, right? Now, for me, I'll stuff my sleeping bag in the bottom, like my top quilt, in the bottom of my pack. I do put them in compression sacks, and then I put my under quilt also in a compression sack, stuff that on top, and then I take the hammock, tarp, and all of that stuff, which is probably about this big, and that goes on top, and all of those go inside my pack. Now, if you have a pack where you can strap some of that stuff onto the outside of it, it'll obviously save you a lot of internal space, which is great, but you still got to carry it. So all in all, the volume of what this system takes up is a lot. And it has been challenging on hunts, especially if you end up having to pack out an animal, because on the way in, my pack was almost busting at the seams full, right? Now, the good thing about the EXO is that the frame separates from the bag, and you can fit stuff in between there. So I still have a lot of space for meat to pack out if I had to, but it takes up a lot of room. I could probably strap my sleeping bag on the top of my bag and or on the bottom of my bag. I'd have to get pretty creative with the straps, and I'd probably have to get some extra straps. The ones that are on there right now aren't long enough to go around the bottom of my bag and hold a sleeping bag on the bottom, which is kind of a downfall of the EXO. Is I wish those straps were just a little bit longer so you could actually put your sleeping bag on the bottom of it. But they tell you to put the sleeping bag inside, and if you do that, then it takes up a lot of volume in your pack space. So, next biggest downfall for hammock camping is site selection. Now, site selection can be incredibly easy, and it can also be incredibly difficult. It took me, granted, I was kind of wandering today, but it took me probably an hour to find a place to camp that I liked. I'm really picky, but I also have hammock camped enough that I know what makes a good spot. It doesn't have to be a level, obviously. I'm on the side of a mountain, kind of tucked into a little bowl right here. And so in terms of where can you hang a hammock, you can hang a hammock in a lot of places. The biggest thing is that you have 2 trees that are anywhere from 15 to 20 feet apart. These 2 trees are 21 feet apart. This is probably one of the widest hangs I've had in a long time. And so sometimes it can be really difficult to find trees that are the right distance, that are also in the right place. And what do I mean by that is, depending on where you're at, like today there's wind. Obviously you guys can probably hear it. Today the wind is coming down like this. And that's why I have my hammock pitched this way, because you never want the wind to blow down this tunnel of your hammock. Otherwise you're going to be freezing all night long, right? And so I've got it set up so that the wind hits the side of the tarp and will probably either go over or over the top. And so it's really important. I've got this pitch a lot steeper. I could actually even pitch it probably a lot more steep yet, just to keep even a little bit more wind out. And I may do that later tonight, but I wanted to open it so you guys could see. So site selection can be really tricky sometimes. You need to make sure that you have trees where you're going. I'm in a place where I'm pretty limited with trees. I'm in an old burn on the mountain here, and it may not look like it because of the footage that you're seeing right now, but I'll show you some footage where you can see everything's burned out and there's not a lot of trees. There's only these little pockets of trees here and there. And so for me in this area, it can be really tricky to find a place to hang because I need to find a spot where it's going to be windy up here to some extent. It's really windy up there, but down here it's pretty manageable. It's pretty nice. It has its moments, like you get a drift right now where the wind comes in at this direction for a moment. But otherwise, it's pretty decent down here. I've got good cover in case we do get a storm so that at least I'm not just getting pounded with rain. I've got good drainage so that nothing's gonna pool up here. It'll obviously run down the mountain. We're not gonna get any rain, so I'm not that worried about it anyway. But site selection can be really important. And that's probably the one thing that I didn't think about when I started hammock camping, is that I thought, well, almost everywhere I go, there's trees. I'll find a place to hang. But sometimes it can be really tricky to find a place to hang. So best advice is scout it out. Like this is the first time I've ever been in here. I found like 3 spots on this ridge that I could have hung. But they just weren't perfect in terms of also where I wanted to be able to glass from in the morning. So for me, like right now, all I have to do is hike up into this saddle right here, hike over here, and I've got a ton of country that I can glass, or even just hike down the ridge here a little bit. So this was my site selection for some of those reasons. I could have hung up there probably an hour ago, and sure, I could have hiked down here as well, but those were just things that I took into consideration for this particular setup and this site selection. So thinking about making sure that you never hang in an area where you could get struck by lightning. Don't stay on the top of ridges. Obviously try to get down into a little bowl or a little pocket where you have some protection. Those are basic camping rules anyway. But the nice thing is that like here, there's no way, I mean, you could probably pitch a tent down here. You'd have to dig it out for it to be flat enough, which you could. It's actually soft enough. I could put a tent there if I wanted to, but I don't have to, which is nice. I don't have to deal with digging it out either. The entire time that it took me to set this up, I'll throw that time lapse here in the video as well, was probably less than 5 minutes maybe. But again, I have my system really dialed in. So let's talk about the system itself, the components of a hammock. So to hang a hammock, you obviously have to have tree straps, something that goes around the tree, and then you have to have some sort of cordage, whether that's whoopee slings or ladder slings or just nylon webbing. There's so many different options out there. Like there's endless amounts of options for how you can hang a hammock. I won't go into all those details, but I'll show you what I use. And what I use, I feel like it's best because it's the lightest out there in terms of both simplicity and the least amount of gadgets and gear and hardware and all of those things. So let's take a look at what I use. All right, let's start with my tree straps. These tree straps are Dutch wear, and I believe they are spider webbing is maybe what he calls it. Again, I'll put all of the links to the descriptions of the products that I use or buy. Some of them I made myself, but this is 1-inch webbing. It's Dyneema webbing, so it's ultra strong, ultra lightweight. The length of this strap, I believe, is a 4-foot strap. You can get longer straps if you need them. And then it's literally just looped into a piece of, this is Dyneema cordage, and this is a whoopee sling. If you don't know what a whoopee sling is, look that up on the internet. But basically it's a whoopee sling. This is the adjustable end. It's almost like a Chinese finger trap. This goes back down through the line and hooks down here, and you can pull this to tighten the hammock or loosen the hammock. And so Down here, you'll see at the end of the whoopee sling is this titanium hook. This is called a Dutch hook, okay? And the titanium hook is what hooks the hammock. Now this right here is a continuous loop that is attached to the hammock. Right? Most hammocks will come with a continuous loop. So this is part of the hammock itself. And then this is how the hammock connects to my whoopee sling. Very simple, just a titanium Dutch hook. These things are unbreakable, they're incredibly lightweight, and that's it. So that is what's on both ends of the hammock. The one down at that end is just black, because that way I know orange is my head end, black is the foot end. Now, this neon green line that you see right here, this is also Dyneema cordage, and this is my tarp. This is called a continuous ridge line. Now, the reason I run a continuous ridge line is because it just works so much better than tying this tarp over to the tree. And the reason being is I can use these prusik knots here. This actually slides up and down this ridge line and makes it incredibly easy for me to adjust where I want the tarp on this line. So I can move the tarp back and forth without having to mess with anything on the tree at all. I can keep the line here. Now the other cool thing about this particular Dyneema cordage, and again, I will post the link, you can buy these off of eBay. Jeff, the guy that makes these, also made my hammock. So, or I'm sorry, that's incorrect. But anyway, they have these little plastic toggles on here. So I'll show you what this use. I'm not using this toggle on this end, but I'll show you what's using on the other end. Now on the other end, down here, let's see, where is it at? Here we go. Is this toggle. And basically what you're able to do is, this is the line that runs around the tree. So it goes around the tree and comes back. And this toggle allows you basically flip this, this little plastic toggle over, lever over the end of the toggle. And then you run this around in this fashion. You pull it tight as you can get this guy, and then you lock it in place just like that. There's a lot of YouTube videos on how to set these up. But again, the reason I use it, it's plastic. This is never, I mean, it's not gonna break. And it allows you to get your ridge line incredibly tight, very tight, because you want as much tension on this ridge line as you can. And then coming down here again, this is my hammock bag. Same thing, got the Dutch hook here connected to the whoopee sling. And the tarp is connected using these little prusik, and these are called soft shackles. When you buy this ridge line, if you buy it from Jeff using the link provided, it comes with these little, these are called prusik soft shackles. And basically this little knot right here holds this on, and it holds it really tightly. So that's pretty much the gear there. Then let's go down here and I'll show you what I've got going on for the tie outs. Basically I'm using this ultra thin and very lightweight, sorry the wind is blowing like crazy here, very thin and ultra lightweight cordage. It is also Dyneema cordage, so it's very lightweight. These little guys here are pretty cool, and they are called Dutch wear. These are titanium fleas, that's what he calls them. They're little fleas. And it's kind of the same thing as that plastic toggle up there. Basically the way these work is I've got it already kind of, sorry here, connected to my stake. This is permanent, so this is actually tied onto the stake permanently, and then the cord runs up, and these fleas are attached to the tarp permanently, okay? And so what you're actually able to do, and I'll show you really quickly if I can do it one-handed. That'd be kind of tricky. Oh, come on. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get it undone with one hand here. I apologize. But basically is you run the cordage through this little hook down here, and then you're able to pull it tight. Actually, I need to tighten it up anyway. All right, there we go. So now you can see it's tight. Pull it down tight, and then you run the cordage back up through, and I got to get my tripod. All right, let's try that again. So I need both hands to do this. So you've got the little tarp flea here, hopefully you can see that, and you've got the hook. This cord here is going down to the stake, and then this is the loose one that I'm hanging onto, and then this is obviously just permanently attached to the tarp. So you pull it down, pull it tight, you can pinch it where you want it, and then you just wrap it up right through that little stinger there. Give it 2 wraps just for extra measure, and then it's tight and it's not going to go anywhere. So you can take a look at that. That's a little focus for you. So it works incredibly well, and I've got that on all 4 corners. Basically the same exact thing going on here. And then here up on top of the tent, this is acting like a spreader bar to kind of give me some internal room, and I basically got the same thing. I just have some cordage hanging on to again, another soft shackle that's got a little this one actually has, I'll show you on this side quickly. It's got a tarp flea there also, and that way if I need to guy this out or take it out to a tree, I can use a guy line and guy it out as well, but that's how it's connected there, and it's just the same on both ways. So that's it for the hammock gear. This is the inside. This is obviously the side that I get in. Got my quilt in there, under quilt. Got a nice little baggie here that holds a bunch of accessories. I'll throw my phone, battery charger in there, bottle of water at night, and then I've got another little orange baggie up here that'll hold like my hat or gloves or any extra sleeping gear or whatever you want to throw in there. Clothing, you can throw it in there. And those are just some other accessories. They don't weigh anything, so it makes it kind of nice to have some storage in your hammock for additional things. All right, guys, well, thanks for watching. If you have any questions about backcountry hammock camping, I know I rambled a lot. I apologize. I'm trying to get as much content and information out there for you guys so you can make an informed decision about whether backcountry hammock camping is for you or not. I think what I would ask you, or maybe you should ask yourself, is what does your sleep look like? Do you sleep well on the ground? Are you comfortable? Do you feel rested? If the answer to that is yes, and you're sleeping on the ground, then there probably isn't much of a reason to change to a system like this. However, if you get a horrible night's rest, if you don't sleep well on the ground, and if you wake up miserable and in pain like I was all the time, then going to a system like this, albeit a little bit heavier, a little bit bulkier in terms of pack space, it might be worth it to you. It certainly is to me, to the point where I sleep in a hammock year-round. I broke my back twice, or not twice, I broke my back in 2 places when I was in high school. And I just cannot get comfortable in a bed no matter what I've tried. I've tried them all. I just can't even sleep in a bed anymore. For me, the hammock has been a lifesaver, and I love being able to sleep in the woods in a hammock and wake up feeling rested and ready to hunt and have the energy that I need to start climbing mountains and chasing big game animals. So I guess for you, the question you need to ask yourself is, if you're getting a good night's rest, then a hammock system might not be for you. But what about those guys that are like, I don't sleep that great, but I could still sleep okay? You got to make that decision. I would urge you to try it. Hammock camping, like I said, it's changed my life. I appreciate and kind of love to try new things anyway, but it's also a gear rabbit hole that you can dive down into and spend a lot of money before you figure it out as well. This is like my 3rd or 4th setup before I finally found the one that works for me. So maybe you guys can learn from my experiences and the gear that I've used. I'll post all the links for everything that I use in the description below. If you have any questions about backcountry hammock camping, please let me know. I'm happy to help. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe button. This is High Country Dan. I'm out.